Hi, in this video, I want to give you a step-by-step example on how to paint skin texture with the paintable brushes. I don't know about you, but I'm addicted to downloading brushes. I personally have well over 1,000 brushes in my collection, and most of them I still don't know how to use them. The reason is simple. Before being able to use any new brushes, it takes time. We first need to experiment with them for a few hours to get to learn exactly how to use them. So this is why in this video, I want to show you how to use the paintable portrait brushes so that you don't have to lose all that time and can jump right in and have fun with them right away. Alright, so I have this illustration that I've been working on it, and it's not finished, but I'm at the perfect point where I could start thinking about adding like freckles and skin texture. So I'm going to give you an example on this one. So when you have the brushes, you'll see we have 10 different brushes. A few are for skin pores, a few are like more coarse texture, and the other ones are for freckles. And so I'm going to show you how I'm going to add freckles to this illustration in 3 steps. Step 1 is going to be to adding just a base texture of skin pore. So sometimes when you paint with a digital medium, it becomes very, well, digital looking, very soft. And so adding a bit of texture is really going to sell your illustration to make it look just a little bit more rounded, a little bit better. So I'm going to create a new layer here. Very important to always add new skin texture on a new layer or any texture on a new layer. And on this layer, I'm going to put it to overlay. This way, it's going to blend with the values I already have here. And I'm going to create a texture with the first brush, the Paintable Skin Pores brush number 1. I'm going to pick one of the value of the skin. It could be like any of them. And I'm just going to try to see what it does. I kind of like this already. I don't want it to be too intense from the beginning. So I'm just going to use this and basically paint on my illustration here. So giving just a few strokes at a few places. The secret of a good texture that you're doing with brushes is to use more than one brush. So I'm going to create a new layer here, and I'm going to take a different brush. I'm going to take the brush number 2. I'm going to take this one on just a normal layer, and I'm just going to add a little bit of that texture here in the shadows, here also on the head. Maybe even here, like this. And it's going to be very subtle, but give that round up of skin texture everywhere. And I pretty like the effect already. I'm going to create a last one here for the skin texture. I'm going to use one here and see if I can just maybe put some texture in the highlights. I'm going to go a little bit higher, maybe with an overlay layer again this time. And see if it does. But you know what, this one I find it a little bit too soft for this one. So I think I'll just stick with those 2. As long as you're using more than one, in this case I use 2, you're pretty good to go. That's step number 1. Step number 2 is going to add a little bit more of a coarse texture. So we have the base of the texture here, but I'm going to create a new layer here. I'm going to use the coarses or coarse texture that we have. We have 2 here. We have the Paintable Skin Pore brushes number 6. Which is a lot more coarse. And I'm going to add this in the highlights this time. Adding just a little bit more of a highlights. Usually in the highlights you have a little bit more of a contrast in terms of like highlights for the skin. That's when your skin is a little bit more oily and it's going to reflect the light. So I'm going to do that here. And I'm going to create a new layer. Once again, I'm going to use the one that we have at the end here, the splatter brush. I absolutely love this one. And I'm going to keep it bright again and just kind of add a little bit more of that coarse texture everywhere. And that's going to add also a lot of charisma to my illustration. I'm going to try to add this here as well. Make sure to not paint like on the eyes or anything like this. So I'm going to put all of those here. We have step number 2, step number 1 in 1, and you can see it's already adding a lot of texture. Just one thing to be careful here is going to also modify your values that you've been working on. So I'm going to put just a mask on this real quick. I'm going to use with a soft round brush, and I'm going to paint just a little bit in the shadows here to just kind of take out this. I don't want to have too much in the shadow. I'm going to keep it more in the highlights, and that should be pretty good to go. Okay, so step number 3 then, we are going to add now the freckles. And for that, I also have some great texture brushes in this. We have 3 for the freckles here. I'm going to start with the smaller one here to see what it does. I'm going to take the color of the skin here, Usually freckles are a little bit like the color of the skin, but just a little bit more dark. So I'm going to paint a new layer here, and I'm not going to let it like this. I'm going to actually delete most of it and paint it in layers. Like I was saying at the beginning, it's very important to have more than one layer to create better textures. I'm going to create a new layer again and add this time with the other texture here, and I'll paint kind of everywhere. Delete the places that I don't want them. There's a lot of just painting and deleting, which I called paint and carve. So it's almost like carving something. You just delete parts. And so this is looking already pretty good. And I'll finish that with one last layer where I use the biggest of the brushes to just add a little bit more of that, random size of freckles. And when it comes to freckles, it's always good as a design point to kind of have one or two that are on their own. So for that, I'm going to create just a normal layer. And in this case, I'm going to create the Marilyn Monroe one, you know, that she got right here. Usually put two colors in it would work better. I might just go with something even darker. And that should make it look bigger. You can also use the saffron brush or a smudge tool to just kind of soften up a little bit the sides, because it's pretty rare that it's super sharp. And so yeah, just like that, I'm going to put all of that together, and I went from something that was looking very flat to something with a little bit more texture. And so this is how to use those brushes in 3-step. And that's how to use those brushes in a nutshell. The brushes are free to download, and if you haven't downloaded them, you can do so right now. I'll put a link in the description of this video. And if you wish to learn more about portraiture, you can always join the Paintable Digital Painting Academy. This is where I place all my premium step-by-step tutorial. In the Academy, you'll find mini tutorials and clear step-by-step to teach you how to paint everything you need to know to see progress in your art. From basic techniques to learn the ABC of your software, to more complicated techniques on how to paint realistic portrait, and advanced courses on how to paint hair and facial anatomy. The Academy also provides a friendly private community of dedicated artists where you'll be able to share your work and get feedback far away from the stress of social medias. I hope to see you in there, and in the meantime, happy painting!